I just got my hands on an actual military surplus two-way satellite radio antenna. This is the kind of thing used by radio pirates around the world to hijack US military communication satellites. I'm pretty sure all the black helicopters that just showed up are a complete coincidence and not related to me in any way. Welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel. Today we've got something really cool to look at that I've been wanting to get around to for a while. The person who sent me this would like to remain anonymous, but I will give a shout out to their son Mason, who is into science and watches the channel, so thank you for being a fan, Mason. So I showed this briefly in an unboxing video, which may or may not be out yet. This is basically a Satcom antenna. If you've seen some of my other videos on military fleet Satcom, they are largely used by Brazilian pirates, Russians over in Europe. They are also supposedly used by the United States Navy, but this is a 1970s system, and when they sent up these satellites, they didn't really use any access control. So basically anybody with the right antenna can jump onto these satellites and use them as a free repeater. Now that is absolutely illegal in most parts of the world, most first world countries, and you can't really get away with that in the US, but you can listen to these and you can hear some interesting stuff on them. And this set is an official military grade Satcom antenna that is designed to talk to those fleet Satcom satellites, both transmitting and receiving, although we won't be doing any transmitting with it because, again, I live in the United States, and even after all the funding cuts to the FCC and the military, they probably would not be happy with me using this to transmit. Now this unit is actually on loan. These are very expensive, so I have to be careful with this. I can't break it, I can't modify it, I do have to give it back to the person who loaned it to me. So we've got the main unit, we have a bunch of cable, and this should kind of all pop together in somewhat of a spring-loaded fashion. These are supposed to be able to be set up pretty quickly. So all these little fins pop out, and this is something called an X-wing antenna. We also have a ground plane that pops out here. And then this whole thing does tilt to the side. So in addition to the reflector, the active unit, we have the director units. And these, apparently you can get a whole bunch of these. You can kind of go as long as you want with these, and that increases your gain but also narrows your focus. I looked this up, and the manual does call it a Yagi antenna, just a three-dimensional one instead of two-dimensional. So, yeah, that's why it has a lot of the same elements. And it is right-hand circular polarization. So the radio signals coming in are basically spiraling in a right-hand direction, and the way this is phased is set up to receive that. Some folks online have said I should call it a Yagi Uda because there were two inventors of the antenna, and usually Uda gets ignored or forgotten. And this thing is tuned for 240 to 400 megahertz, which is military airband and military satellite. So the way the fleet Satcom system works is an uplink signal at something around 290 to 318 megahertz goes up to the satellite. It bounces that back down around 240 to 270 megahertz. And it's just a straight linear repeater, so anything that comes in on one of those uplink channels comes right back down on one of the appropriate transponders. There are a couple really popular ones with Brazilian radio pirates, with Russian users over in Europe, with other radio pirates around the world. I've heard music, I've heard basically whole pirate radio stations on there, Russian government propaganda, all kinds of weird stuff. And I always get interesting comments from the Russian troll farms when I do one of these videos saying, oh no, those Russian propaganda messages and Russian national anthem that you're hearing, those aren't Russians using that. Here in the US, we can most easily hear the ones over the Western Hemisphere, the ones that cover North and South America, and so most of the unauthorized users I hear are Brazilian, speaking Portuguese. They're loggers, they're people out in the Brazilian wilderness who have kind of figured out that you can take a ham radio, throw in a frequency doubler, and you're up in 300 megahertz or close enough, and you can basically just hack into this satellite system and use it as your own private space-based CB radio. There are tri-band Baofangs which have a intermediate ham radio band in between 2 meters and 70 centimeters. I forget what it's called. Almost nobody uses it. There's very little ham radio use that I've been able to hear on that band, but you can get radios that will listen and transmit on it. And you can also get a hacked radio like this Kwangshan, which is kind of a competitor to Baofeng, and you can get custom firmware for these that basically open them up to listen to anything. There's also one other radio I want to try, and I don't know if it's going to work. This is an actual military radio that can be tuned to those frequencies 250 to 350 megahertz. I believe it's a British unit, although there's a bunch of markings in German on it. Now, this radio in particular is part of a bigger system. This is one head end of a rack-mounted tower or stack of equipment. It's part of the Ptarmigan system, which was kind of an early trunked telephone system during the Cold War for military use. This was sent to me by viewer Rob on my Discord, so thank you, Rob. We don't know if I can actually use this kind of as is. Rob even said that he couldn't figure out a way to use it just directly. It's got weird proprietary inputs. The radio itself here maybe is not super useful as is, but we possibly can open it up and use some of the parts inside. This says filter Aufbau, so that's probably some kind of RF filter. The left-hand dial is also moving some stuff down in here as well as back here, so it's tuning something within these guys. So these might be the cavity filters. Just running some of the German tags through Google Translate, it seems like this is the preamplifier. This is another amplifier. This thing is a rich tongue slider, which I guess translates as head of the department. So yeah, that does something. This is kind of the era of electronics I like. It's newer than tubes, so you don't have to deal with vacuum tubes, but it's older than everything just living on one chip on a circuit board. This actually has discrete components. It feels like I could just pull these out, use these as filters, amplifiers individually. I'm very tempted to start pulling things out and playing with it, but it might be worth more to me as an assembled unit, and maybe some ham radio folks out there will tell me how I can use this, what I can do with it, how I can modify some of the interior pieces. So I'm going to set this thing aside for now, put its housing back on. Thank you again, Rob, for sending me this. Rob sent some other neat stuff that we will get to in other videos, and yeah, I am looking forward to playing with this again in the future, but I will have to learn more about it first. So that means we'll just have to listen to the Trivac antenna here using one of my handheld radios or an SDR. So let's take it outside and see what we can find. Already ran into a problem with the Quangsheng here. The battery's dead. With a Baofeng, you can leave it sitting around in a drawer for years and fire it up and it still has like 3 bars of battery. But this thing, I haven't used it for a couple of weeks and the battery's flat. Now the problem with the Baofeng is it can't tune to that entire range. It can just basically see the bottom of the military satellite frequency band. I actually was hearing some interesting stuff on the SDR up above. Fortunately, I can do that on my phone with a USB on-the-go adapter. This one is probably some kind of actual military data signal. Here's an active pirate frequency. So the great thing with this antenna is it doesn't really matter where I aim it. It just has to be kind of vaguely south. So this is fun, but it's a little bit annoying to try to scroll around the radio spectrum on the phone. So maybe we'll pull out a laptop and look into this a little more deeply. I've also switched over to the Newelec HackRF1 software-defined radio, and yes, my laptop is in here just wedged in the corner of the garage. The SDR is balanced on the drill press. I don't have a good ham shack. I need to set something up. I keep saying I'm going to set up a good ham shack, but I just don't have the space for it, so everything lives in the corner of the garage right now. My little rooftop antenna farm here is really growing, although this one's not going to stay up here permanently. Down here around 249 megahertz, we have some dedicated military data channels. Some of these transmissions don't seem to be much more than noise, and it's possible it's just jamming. It might just be the military trying to kick some of the pirates off of channels that they want to use. So this frequency has been active for a little while with pirates, and this repeating pattern here might actually be military users trying to drown them out or knock them off the channel. And this interference just showed up recently after they'd been talking for a while. And it looks like it might have worked. It knocked the... oh, there they are again. This is an interesting pattern. This little diagonal line that just went past is possibly some kind of tuning element, and then you'll see these guys started talking, so maybe somebody tuned up their radio and then started using this frequency again. I'll hop over here so we can listen to that. It's always tricky to adjust the squelch on here so that we can hear the conversation and not just the static. Here's a military data satellite signal that has been nicknamed the water droplets. If I turn on the audio, you can probably tell why. Let's try something else here. The NATO countries are not the only ones to use this band for satellite communication. Russia also has some communication satellites in this approximate frequency range, both civilian and military. There are systems called Strela and then GoNets. They are a store-forward satellite where Russian operatives or agents around the world can basically transmit up to the satellite, and that will get stored and then dumped back down to Russia when the satellite passes overhead. So these are low Earth orbit satellites. They are cheaper and easier to launch than geostationary satellites, which we've been mostly listening to so far, since they're in low Earth orbits, and this antenna seems pretty good at picking up signals from a pretty wide range. I'm actually just going to aim the thing straight up. That way we're not getting as much from geostationary orbit to the south, and we'll be getting signals from kind of a wider area directly overhead, or at least that's the theory. Now, I'm not close enough to Russia to see the downlink from these satellites, but supposedly they transmit a ready pulse or beacon signal once a minute on one of possibly a couple different frequencies. I'm not exactly sure how this system works. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I'm going to see if I can watch those frequencies and see if we can find that beacon pulse coming from those satellites. That might be one of the Russian satellites right there. I just saw a little blip. Yes, I think that was it. I think that is GoNets or Strela. Yeah, not much to see here. It's just a little blip. It's just the satellite saying, I'm here, I'm overhead, I'm ready. And then an automated transmitter on the ground can uplink whatever data or message that it has for the satellite. And then the satellite stores that, dumps it over Moscow or wherever in Russia. It's kind of an interesting system. I can't really do much with it, but it's interesting to spot it on here. Yeah, that is definitely it. That is every minute or so for a half second. So there's one other Russian system that I want to look at, the Meridian satellites. Now, these are in kind of a weird orbit. I believe it's called a Molnia or Tundra orbit. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I'll throw up some diagrams to try to show what I mean. It's a very odd orbit. There aren't that many satellites in this. Mostly they're Russian satellites. And Scott Tilley, who runs the Riddles in the Sky website and is well known for finding forgotten zombie satellites, discovered that these Meridian satellites have a number of linear repeaters, which again just kind of broadcast whatever they see on different wavelengths. There's one on C-band, I think there's some on L-band, and then for our purposes, there's one in this UHF 279 megahertz range, so we'll be trying to listen to that. So for this, I've aimed the Trivac antenna to the north, which is the complete opposite of where you'd normally expect a satellite antenna to be aimed. My big dishes here are aimed at geostationary orbit to the south, but a Tundra or Molnia orbit basically has a longer dwell time over the Arctic regions, over the North Pole, so aiming the antenna north gives us a better chance of catching one of these satellites. These satellites are supposed to live around the 278 megahertz region, and they supposedly have a pretty wide transponder. It's about a megahertz wide, so anywhere in this region we could be seeing relayed signals through one of the Meridian satellites. And there we go, we're getting something modulated within this wider carrier frequency. I wanted to see if I could improve reception on this, so I added a Newelec Lana LNA. I've also stuck in a Newelec Flamingo FM. So this is an FM band stop filter. Basically, it eliminates any local FM on the broadcast band. We have both the stripy stray cats of the neighborhood. I think they're actually... Hi, Little Stripes. Hi. You're cute. Hello. There's Little Stripes. There's Big Stripes. Pretty sure Big Stripes is Oliver. He's a little less friendly. Come here. Oliver. And this is why I put this one-way cat door in the garage, because these little critters keep coming in here and getting stuck, and I don't really need them to get stuck, especially if they're going to be having baby cats. Well, so far I haven't really seen anything recognizable from Meridian 9. Now, that could be due to a couple factors. That particular satellite might not have this transponder active. There are at least 10 of these Meridian satellites, and some of the older ones have retired or stopped working, or they've just had those transponders turned off. There is another one that's even newer, Meridian 10, which I could look at later. I just have to find the appropriate orbit. And then the orbit itself could have something to do with this. Derek SGC explains this a little better, so I will link to some of his information down in the description. That Tundra orbit, like I said, basically comes way out from the Earth on its northern pass, And that way it's basically beaming down at northern latitudes like Russia, and then it sits there for a while. It has a long dwell time out at the apogee, then it loops back in, and the perigee comes around a little bit faster. It has a much shorter dwell time, and then it zips back out, goes back into that long elliptical orbit, and sits at the apogee again. While it's doing that, because it's moving around, it tends to pass through different radio signals. So let's say there's a directional signal from a TV station. Derek uses this example as well. If there's a TV station broadcasting horizontally, which they usually do because they don't want to just beam energy into space for no reason, because the Earth is curved, the TV signal that is being broadcast horizontally eventually ends up leaving the Earth and going out at an angle into space. So if the satellite is passing through that TV signal and the signal happens to be at the right frequency, the input or uplink frequency for the transponder, it will just happily grab that incoming transmission, rebroadcast it on the downlink frequency that I'm looking at, and so you basically can get television repeaters or a TV satellite accidentally in different parts of the world. Now, it also seems to do that with air traffic control. It does it with some other radio stations around the world, and it just kind of depends on what frequencies people are using, if they happen to be overlapping with the input range of that satellite. I played around with my globe so long that I lost my North Pole string. I don't know how I'm going to hang this back on the ceiling now. All right, this looks new. I didn't see this signal coming in before. This seems like it could be an FM signal, but I can't make anything out on the audio from it. All right, I think we finally have an identifiable signal being relayed from the Meridian satellite unintentionally. We're getting some kind of a signal here within this wider block, and then we're getting something over here. So yes, pretty sure we are now seeing those unintentional relays from that Meridian satellite. It's all pretty faint and mysterious, but again, we're just kind of getting the unintentional side of other channels from other parts of the world. This got a little stronger for a second. You can't actually hear what it is, but you can hear that there is somebody talking, and it sounds like a radio station or TV audio. The satellite is just passing through the beams of random Earth TV transmitters and radio transmitters. It looks like there's a few more things popping up over here very faintly. We're also getting random blips of data like this signal here. So this thing is fun, but as you can tell, it is getting super dark out here again, so I should probably just put this thing away for the night before I fall off the roof. Alright, it's morning of the next day. If you're wondering about the other dish here, that is my modified S-band tracking dish that I use for things like US military satellites, S-band weather satellites. I have a couple videos on that one. The LNA also amplifies the pirates a little bit better down on the Satcom bands. Here's a really active set of transponders. There are 3 different pirate conversations going on across 3 different frequencies over here. And then another active set of transponders. Again, 2 different conversations going on. This is an interesting one. I'm getting like somebody's background noise in their house. So tune in to exciting satellite pirate radio where you can hear somebody doing the dishes in the background in South America. So this one definitely looks like a foreign radio station or somebody just playing a recording over one of those satellite transponders. It's pretty faint and scratchy, so even if it was in English, I don't think I could make out what they're saying. So the Trivac antenna here is really fun, it's really cool, and it's really good at picking up a lot of those military satellites. It should be, because that's what it's designed for, and that's why they sell it to the military. I still kind of want one, but I don't know if I'm willing to spend several $100s on one of these. It's more of a novelty. I'm not finding anything super crazy to listen to. It's mostly little data blips here and there, Portuguese transmissions from Brazil. There's not a whole lot of maybe replay value or long-term entertainment here. It's just kind of a novelty thing. But that being said, yes, I super appreciate being loaned this, and I am still having a lot of fun with it.
Negativo, que tá boca louca. Positivo.
Maybe somebody out there knows of another thing I could try with this. Leave that down in the comments if you can think of a satellite or other system that I can listen to with this antenna while I still have it. Now I could try to make my own version of this. I actually have a diagram floating around somewhere of how to make an X-wing antenna like this active element. And that could be kind of fun to play with, although I haven't quite figured out the phasing harness, and that's something that I might have to work on in a future video. Anyway, we've looked at all of the regular US Navy Satcom, Air Force Satcom, we've looked at some of the Milstar stuff, we've listened to the Brazilian trucking pirates. That is pretty much the main, most interesting thing that I seem to be able to hear with something like this at the moment. And again, it's not much more than a novelty because I don't understand Portuguese, so I have no idea what those guys are saying to each other. I still find it super entertaining that the main user of those military satellites are some truck drivers in Brazil. That's kind of funny. We also heard a little bit from a couple of those Russian satellite systems, the low Earth orbit GONETS or Strela system, and the high Earth orbit Molniya orbit Meridian system. I got a little bit out of that, but again, not super exciting. I think those are more interesting when they are over Europe, when they're picking up things from other countries around Europe and the Middle East that still use some of those same frequencies for TV stations, radio stations, etc. It just depends on where the satellite is in its orbit, what kind of signals it is intercepting, and what you can hear from your location. So I heard a little bit, I got some kind of radio or TV station, but not strong enough to identify, so still kind of interesting, but needs some more investigation in the future. Anyway, we do also still have that ptarmigan military radio that should be somewhat compatible with this if I could get it working, or if I could pull some components out and modify them into something that would work with this. So if you know anything about that ptarmigan radio, if you know anything about pulling modules like that out and reusing them, please let me know in the comments, and that's something I would be super interested in doing. Once again, shout out to the person who loaned me this antenna and to their son Mason. Thank you guys, this is awesome. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And finally, thank you to everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.